And he's like, well, when you keep your body still and your mind is really active, amazing ideas come forward. And that's when I was like, oh my goodness. Because my first guest on my podcast was a guy named Carl Deisroth. He's the world's best bioengineer. He's a psychiatrist. He raised 5 kids. He's a phenom. He'll probably win a Nobel Prize. And he told me his practice of coming up with ideas is after his kids are asleep at night, he sits down and he keeps his body completely still and he forces himself to think in complete sentences, keep his mind super active. And I was like, wow. And it turns out that if you look historically, a number of scientists have talked about this, a number of creatives have talked about this. And then I don't have any studies to support this, but then I realized, what is the state of our brain or time when the brain is very active and our body is still and our mind is coming up with all sorts of ideas? It's rapid eye movement sleep. We're paralyzed during rapid eye movement sleep. We have sleep atonia. And everybody knows, based on dream studies and studies of creativity, that during rapid eye movement sleep is 2 things happen. There's a removal of some of the emotional load of previous days' experiences, which is why rapid eye movement sleep is so critical for emotion regulation afterwards and for the regulating depression and things like that. But also we come up with new configurations. And so Carl Deisroth, Einstein, there are reports of this, of him walking and then closing his eyes and stopping and describing his mind moving forward while his body was still. Very kind of subjective. Rick has this practice. And I thought to myself, like, wow. So I've started trying to do a sort of meditation where I force myself to be very bodily still with my mind very active. I can't, just started this. Kind of interesting in light of creativity. You're just being you. So when Rick or Lex is just being Lex, or Chris Williamson is just being Chris Williamson, or Whitney Cummings is just being Whitney Cummings. So when a podcast works, I think it's because you're just being you. And it seems so obvious, it's kind of almost trite, but Rick is like, exactly. And the biggest mistake is to take the feedback, the comments, whatever, the hit pieces, whatever, and to change who you are.
Right.
Now, there is sometimes useful information that comes back to us in ways we could do better in life, and certainly I am doing that. It's like an art. Like if you watch the movie, one of my favorite movies, the Basquiat movie, right, with Benicio del Toro and Dennis Hopper and Christopher Walken and David Bowie. Like, why was he so amazing? Is because Jean-Michel Basquiat was just being himself. Until the fame got to him, an article got written about how he was, Warhol's lapdog, they called him, or something like that.
And
people love that.
It resonates.
People love that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know hip hop that well, but like, you don't have to see Eminem very many times, or watch 8 Mile more than a couple of times, or listen to his music. Understand, like, there's an energy there.
Yeah.
It's not manufactured. That's
right.
him.
People love that. They love authenticity. That's why they love Old Dirty Bastard. Who that guy was? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like, I'm a huge Joe Strummer fan, and I remember asking Rick, I was like, hey, like, what do you think it was about Strummer? The Clash were only around for like 5 years. He was like, come and gone, right? And he said, very Rick, he goes, there's something about Joe where everything he said, he brought his entire life experience to that. And I'm like, well, that's about as mystical as it gets. Like, what do you mean? And he's like, he just was purely himself that day with no concern about how you would perceive him.
Right.
He wasn't trying to impress you or look punk or not look punk. He just,
he just was.
Strummer fell in love with hip hop.